events in. So I'm going to be reaching out to all of the arts groups on the island, youth theater, the band, the Russian chamber orchestra, everybody. And we'll all start feeding this in. And in a month or two, when it starts being really robust, we'll really try to put the word out and ask for the city to help with that, to put the word out so that people can say, what's happening on Mercer Island? And they go to the community events calendar and look, there's a ton of stuff happening. So it would be great if we could enlist your help, enthusiasm, and especially volunteer hours. Come help us at Summer Celebration and do the kids' artwork or get something going for the Sculpture Park walk. Did I use up my 3 minutes?
10 seconds.
Any questions? It's great to see you all in person, and I look forward to working with you. I'm going to give you all an art walk map, and please come and visit on
Thank you.
Friday.
Thank you so much, Anne.
There you go. Thanks for all you do.
Thank you. If there are no further appearances, we will move on to special business. Our next item of special business is Art in Public Places 6-year work plan, our workshop number 1. And for that, we welcome Sarah Blubus, CIP project manager.
Okay, good evening, Arts Council. Wow, live and in person. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. For those of you who are in the room, you'll be up on the screen in front of you to see the PowerPoint. So let's go ahead and get that started. And I can see in real time. This is so nice. I don't need confirmation on whether or not we can see it because we're all here together. Okay. Terrific. Well, thank you so much for all of you for making time. I know this is a special meeting. I know we have potentially more of these special workshops scheduled over the summer, but it's really great to just get you all together and have an opportunity to kind of have more of a working session to talk about the 6-year Art in Public Places work plan. So last month when we were all together for your regular meeting, we kicked off the process to start this internal planning effort. Tonight's workshop number 1, where we're primarily going to focus on what we're calling the draft project opportunities list, and also a couple other minor topics related to public art. So we'll just get into it. So here are our goals for tonight. First and foremost, I'm going to ask for input to inform that draft project opportunities list. Hopefully you all had a great time working on your pre-work that we sent out earlier this month to inform this discussion. The big thing I just want to note, or the biggest takeaway, is that we're not necessarily looking tonight to identify specific projects. It's really going to more be kind of the first opportunity for everyone to have a discussion, kind of probably the most brainstormy we'll kind of get throughout this process over the next several months. So after tonight, after we kind of get everything that you all have been thinking about following all of that pre-work, we as staff will come back at the next workshop and then again in July with a more formalized list that we'll get your feedback on. So tonight's step 1, there will be other opportunities. I know there's some folks missing tonight as well. Some people had sent items ahead of time, so we'll include that in the discussion too, but this is really just the first opportunity to start talking about this. Our second goal is to share about an upcoming public art deaccession request. So we're going to go from new public art project opportunities to a public art project that we are going to request that you all deaccession. So we'll highlight that tonight, and then again, I'll come back in July and ask for that formal deaccession request or recommendation. Then we'll preview some public art policy needs. As we noted last month during the kickoff for this process, we are hopefully going to tackle a few big policies as part of this whole planning effort. So I'll talk a little bit about those tonight, and then at our next workshop, we'll dig into them a little more. And then, excuse me, speaking of next workshop, hoping to confirm the date and time for that one. So let's go ahead and get into it. So I think the opportunity to brainstorm, discuss potential project opportunities is probably going to be the best part of this project. So I apologize that we're starting off with it, but like I said, there will be more opportunities to talk about it. Really, the goal of this work plan, which we discussed last month, is to provide an internal guide for how we will think about public art over the next 6 years and potentially even longer than that. As we discussed last month, the work plan is really intended to be kind of a living, evolving document. We will build in opportunities to figure out how to kind of refresh it every few years, but this is really kind of the first start of having like a dedicated internal planning process for our public art program. So we sent you all a bunch of pre-work, and before we kind of get into the meat of it, the items that we asked you to come with, I kind of just wanted to see how it went for everyone. I know at least one person got out and looked at all the public art on the island. I know people sent some ideas to me, especially about some of those planning documents that I had sent out as well. So I really just wanted to take an opportunity first to kind of hear from everyone, like, how did it go? Did you get out and explore? Did you get onto Story and scan some QR codes? Did you read the comp plan? How did it all go for you? We'll just do a round robin. I'll start with Jonathan.
Well, I'm still evaluating. I don't really have any specific comments right now. I guess it's just a general observation. I think it's important that the island really make some very public comments and commitments to diversity, inclusion, sustainability, and that should be reflected in our future work, including artwork of, physical artwork or performance work or whatever kind of work we're doing. So everyone on the island feels welcome and included.
So I mostly am aware of the art that is in the places that I frequent, which tends to be the downtown center area. And Luther Burbank are kind of as my family and ages and stages where we go. We do also get down to the south end. I have 2 middle schoolers. And so, it's been the Story app is really great to kind of give a more of a description. I love the historic parts of Luther Burbank already before I even became a member of the Arts Council. So getting more in depth on understanding different parts of it has been really interesting. I'm super excited about the upcoming art that's going to be installed there as well. I think, generally overall, that there is a lot of sculptural art, but I don't think that there is enough awareness within the community of everything that there is to offer. I know that the sculpture part is sort of separated from like the downtown businesses and things like that. So you're seeing, on the corners or the sidewalks as you're walking and you're engaging, but you're not necessarily, you kind of have to make an effort to go to the sculpture park and that part of it. So I love finding different things and I need to do some more exploring as well.
So yeah, I mean, like you alluded to at the beginning, I've been on the Arts Council for a few years and decided, you sent out the link previously about all the pieces of art in the city, and I just decided, like, why not go and visit them all? So spent the last week and a half visiting them, and it's been interesting. I mean, I've been on the island for a long time, and a lot of these pieces I had not seen before. Some of them, I mean, I was telling someone earlier today, there's like the flock exists. It's like a set of sculptures that's like at the bottom of Gallagher Hill that I've driven by. I don't know how many times.
I live right there.
Yeah, and I've driven by it so many times, but this time I'm like, I'm gonna get out of my car and I'm gonna walk and I'm gonna look at them, and I counted them. I'm like, I don't know how many there are. There's 39. And I'm like trying to learn about it. Like I've never like there's pieces like that I've seen before so many times, but I've never like really looked at. And there's other pieces that I'm confident I've never seen in my entire life.
And on really windy days, the wings
Yeah.
do that flippy thing.
And so it's cool to see like the different pieces. I mean, I was talking to someone earlier today that's like very involved in the city, and I was telling her about it, and she was asking like, how do I find where the pieces of art are in the city? And I sent her the link, but like, I think it did show that like, I don't think people know where the pieces are in the city. And yeah, I mean, I don't know, we can talk later about the types of pieces and, I've said to other people, I think there's a lot of sculptures and we could do different types of pieces in the city. We're missing pieces at the south end of the island.
Mhm.
I think there's opportunity for improvement in the city's collection.
There are some really nice murals, right, when you get off, north, is it North Mercer Way?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like the big mural that we have on the wall that
Mhm.
was like an Arts Council project from a few years ago. So that is different. I mean, that's certainly a
Yeah,
different
but I
type.
think that we could
concept.
definitely use more of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we all think that it's better if we can do something that integrates more with the area that we're going into rather than procuring. I mean, like on the screen here, we've got like this horse that's outside here. That's
Horse.
what? Is that what?
Yeah,
Isn't it a horse?
Yeah, no, it's a horse.
It's a horse.
Yeah.
And then it's like, you could take the horse out and put how many different pieces in that exact spot? And I think it's nice to try to find things that integrate with the space and make sense. And as part, maybe I didn't read the story behind that particular piece, so maybe there is a story, but I think that to the extent that we can integrate everything with like the theme of the location.
Like the
would be
history of
better.
the island. Is that what?
Yeah, the history of the island or the history of the location, or like specifically with like, why are we putting this piece in this location as opposed to just getting a piece of a sculpture that we could put in any number of places.
Yeah.
As I think when I started doing my research and exploring around, I think before going into this, underappreciated how much there is. And I think a lot of the sentiment here is there's a lot out there that probably goes unnoticed for the most of the community. And so I was kind of surprised and happy to see how much there actually was. Physically, I was more exploring the south end because that's where I spend most of my time. And it did seem like most of the art pieces were north end, especially in the city center. And I really appreciate the pieces that are down in the south end. I think there's definitely opportunities for more in those areas. And then the story aspect of it in the app, I really appreciated the backstory behind the art pieces and being able to learn more about those. A good example of that is I've driven by the fire station down the south side a bunch of times looking at those concrete blocks and just kind of not knowing what it was, but then to see that it's, a part of the World Trade Center and a big part of it has a big story behind it. I thought that was really cool and something that if, getting that type of word out and having those backstories behind the pieces of art definitely gave those pieces a lot more meaning and I connected with them more. And now I think about that stuff when I drive by them, which is, I think, what art should do.
Well, for the record, Ted Weinberg, the liaison from City Council, so not a voting member of the Arts Council, but lived here on Mercer Island for over 40 years. And so I love reading through that list of all of the art pieces in the collections. It's like, I remember where that is. Oh, I remember seeing that one. That's what that one is called. Okay. And there's some that I would love to go out and learn more about, like getting the docent tour set up for the sculpture garden. There's a lot of pieces along there. I don't know, but generally speaking, people on Mercer Island love their art. They love their parks. They love their art. And yes, we do have an excellent public utilities and fire and police and YFS and schools. These are all critical things for sustaining life. But to quote something from one of my favorite movies, I guess, the Dead Poets Society, it's art and it's poetry and it's beauty and joy and thrills that we live life for. And so I really want to see the art get out there and get seen and get understood and more people to learn about the story behind each of the art pieces. Because there's so much beauty out there for everyone to explore.
Well, I really appreciate you all actually taking the time to do the homework and get out there. I agree. The public art collection is probably a major underutilized asset that we have as an arts council, but also just as a community in general. We have one of the like arguably best earth form sculptures in the state, if not this part of the country. Here in Luther Burbank Park, we have had a very long history of pretty dedicated public advocacy and support of the arts. And I do think that a lot of times, and all of that started with public art here on the island as well. So I think that there are a lot of opportunities to kind of build on what is already there. We have these platforms like Story that we can really build out a little more and connect more folks on the island with the collection. About the horse sculpture, because it does have a story background. This was a sculpture that was donated to the city by local community members, coordinated originally by the Arts Council to honor a staff member actually who had lived with or worked with the Arts Council for many, many years. And when she retired from the city, she was going to raise Peruvian Paso colts. So that is a very literal honoring for that staff person. So there is, a lot of sculpture like that on the island, but there is also other really interesting, unique works that we can highlight more and potentially do more of as a result of this process. So I'm going to attempt to do a whiteboard situation, but in PowerPoint. So we asked you specifically to come with three sentences or three short phrases in response to kind of two questions. So the first one, which you all kind of expounded on already, how do you describe the public art collection today? And I heard a lot about discovery, connection, embrace of the arts, probably quality of the collection, a lot of sculpture. But I really love to go around. And so the sentences that you see up here right now, these are from one of your fellow board members, Suzanne Scone. She couldn't be here tonight, but she sent her information along ahead of time. And I'd love to just kind of go around again and really hear from you all. How would you put into kind of, if you had to describe the public art collection to others as you see it today, and maybe it sounds a bit like you were doing that as you were exploring the collection, but really, how would you describe it? And it can be a phrase, it can be a short sentence, but I really would just kind of love to go kind of round robin again and hear that. So I will start on the other end this time with you, Ted, and we're gonna type it in here, do it as close to a whiteboard as we can, and we'll see how it goes.
Well, I think that generally speaking, I see a lot of physical art. I see a lot of bronze and sculpture, and I don't see in our collection a lot of performing art yet. Has the city of Mercer Island ever commissioned a play? Have we ever commissioned a dance piece or an orchestra a symphony for the high school for some budding musician or composer in the high school to compose, but have something to kind of expand beyond just physical forms of art.
How about you, JB?
I think kind of going back on what my experience was just doing the research, there were kind of two things that stood out. One was that it is well supported and prioritized on the island to commission new pieces of art and maintain them. However, it's also underappreciated and less known amongst kind of my community and my neighbors and family and so on. So, yeah.
Okay, how about you, Daniel?
I mean, they've already said some of the things that, I mean, I agree, obviously, with like the lots of sculptures and, I mean, I think geographically it seems concentrated toward, I mean, in the town center and then more generally in the north end with like very specific areas that have a lot of them. I think that, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, yeah, they've hit the items that I had documented beforehand, underappreciated and, trying to think of something else to say. I mean, I did think that the art collection was sizable. Like, I guess I would say like it's more significant than I think I realized.
Okay. How about you, Elizabeth?
Again, I think a lot of what I think is already up there, but I would definitely have to, agree with Ted that we are very, very focused on the visual art, and that we need to find a way to engage more in the performing arts and all types of it. I do know, because my daughter plays cello in the middle school orchestra, that they have a piece that was commissioned for them. So that's really exciting. That's going through the school district, of course. I think there's like ample opportunity in regard to talent and ability on the island, but I think that what we are severely lacking is a place to gather and to perform those arts. And I've actually had the opportunity through my work with Tacoma Opera in using the Federal Way Art Center, which is a brand new building. It is stunning, and it gives money back to the city now that it's been built, because they rent it out at cost, for a cost. And so it is a revenue opportunity. So I think that, that for me, if we're going to look at putting more of a focus on performing arts, we need a place for people to do it, and a place that people can come and gather, which becomes a more complicated thing, because then you need parking and you need, a location and all of those things. So obviously this is like bigger down the road. It's not going to happen next year, but I do think that there is a lost opportunity. We are such a rich, diverse city. And that we don't have a performing arts space is just really sad. And I think it's a goal that we need to work towards.
Okay. Okay. How about you, Jonathan?
Yeah, I do agree with the issue of this. People don't know what the art council does, and the art community is really kind of disconnected. I think that the art council could play, and I think maybe it did previously, a more prominent role in connecting all the different diverse groups on the island, different types of artists, visual and performing, who often are in separate silos, don't really talk to one another. And, one way of getting, more community involvement, I think, would be to have more crowdsourced art, like the lantern exhibit, for instance. There are a large number of people who are creating an artwork. And they could say, that's mine, and their family members, and this little piece of it is something that I contributed, and that's permanent. You have some permanent pieces. I think that would be beneficial to have more, instead of focusing on an individual artist and having commission to an individual person. To have more kind of crowdsourced art would be useful and beneficial.
And I think that this most recent project that you can talk more about, Jeremy, because you were just turn my microphone on. Sorry, the most recent project that with the medallions at Luther Burbank, I feel that definitely was more of a sort of a crowdsource idea where, we engaged with community at Summer Celebration, and I took some of the coloring pages home to my kiddos, and, and the stickers and everything. I mean, that was really, I think, really, really well done. Props to our staff. And so I think more opportunity like that to really engage with the community. I mean, we do have a really good showing that comes out for Mostly Music in the Park and for Summer Celebration. And those are opportunities that, we can get the Arts Council to, where we can get feedback from the community. We had our big, with all of the different artists on the island, a couple, was that 2 years ago, last year? I don't, it's all a blur. But we got feedback from the different arts groups, you know,
yeah.
and what they're looking for. And I think that this all kind of ties together with what we're talking about our goals are. And what we're hearing from the community that they
Mhm.
want. The other thing that we obviously need that I just mentioned to Daniel is that everyone else is getting a troll.
I tried to
And
get us a troll.
I would
tried.
really, I just want to put a vote in for that. Okay.
That's really funny.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Because I mean, two of the people here mentioned the performing arts, and I didn't
Mhm.
mention that because I guess what I'm not clear on like the public art collection, like,
Right.
because there's things in here that like say, like, we support these things, like the
Mhm.
Island Lanterns I'm seeing here, that's like, it was a great project, but I don't like, that's not eligible, like it says in the documentation, it's not eligible for the 1%. So how do we
Bridge those.
bridge that?
Yeah, so I think a lot of what you all are landing on, and I'm not surprised by this, is just sort of lack of awareness and really community connection with the public art collection and with public art in general. And I do think that, you know, in addition to kind of the core public art collection, works of art that are funded by our 1% program, that'll, you know, be sort of a main focus of this work plan, planning ahead for 6 years. There's kind of the, you know, the other bubbles outside of that that really foster more connection with the public art collection that aren't necessarily building new works of art or installing new works of art. So, you know, to me, a big goal of Island Lanterns was always to get people engaged in the public art making process. It's artwork that is displayed, you know, ephemerally, but I love the idea of eventually, you know, could we have a mural or a project that the community actually helped install? We've done a little bit of that. The murals down at the Luther Burbank Play Area are a good example of that. But it has been a while since we've done a project like that. And so I think, you know, you all are kind of hitting on it in a big way, even if it's not really specifically saying it, is like, how do you actively get people connected to the art? And that can be fostered in so many different ways. And so, you know, when I hear performing arts, I hear maybe a good way to build support for long-term space for performing arts is, you know, how do we use our existing public spaces? So things like Mostly Music in the Park. We've tried in the past to add like dance and other forms of art and theater to that. Is there a different way to kind of cultivate that experience? And then you sort of start to foster more of that connection. And maybe that can be around our public art collection. Maybe it can be a piece that is commissioned in response or inspired by, you know, works in the collection or works in the outdoor gallery. So I think some of this process is really like, you know, not only like, okay, we want to do X public art projects sometime in the next decade, but also how do we want to create long-term support and connection with the public art collection? And I think a lot of what you all were saying is tied to that too. It's more on the advocacy side of it, and the connection piece of it, as opposed to, you know, although we could, you know, there's a possibility, maybe we can commission a performing arts piece. I think that would be really cool. I think that would be awesome. So, you know, there's definitely ways to build off the public art collection as this really core group of assets that the city manages. You know, as I think you noted, Daniel, like there's a lot of public art in the collection. Those are all capital assets owned by the city, and we can take more advantage of those by really kind of building up their presence and the awareness of them among the community. That's actually a good segue too, because I think you're hitting on sort of the lack side a lot. Like we lack connection or we lack awareness, but I really wanted to hear a little bit more if you feel it at all, like what does the collection do really well? Is there anything that you feel is really inspiring or engaging as the collection stands today? And it looks like Elizabeth is very ready to answer that question.
Yes, I do. So I have to say that my favorite one is downtown is the one in front of the Mercer, which is the little kids reading over the book. For me, what that does is that it brings out a feeling that it just brings me joy when I see it. And so I love those pieces. I love the older couple that's over in front of QFC that are kind of like, you know, hugging, and I don't know, those are the pieces I like. I also prefer more, like, my artistic style tends to be more realism than, say, like the more avant-garde random sculptures, but everyone has a different, you know, taste. And so it's important to have a variety of art. That being said, I do think, again, like with updating the Handsome Ballards was really important because I think that some of our art is a little bit dated. There's definitely that 70s, 60s vibe in some of our art. And I think that being able to maintain the artwork that was created and the sentiment behind it, but kind of updating it more, I think is a really good goal for that. So I think, you know, the positives would be that, you know, some of the art that we have, I think, is just really inspiring and beautiful. I feel like I've turned into my dad because he used to always make us like read the plaques next to everything, and I'd be like, oh, this is so boring. And now I make my kids listen. So, you know, but it's also cool that, you know, with the technology progressing, you know, that they can just pull it up on their phone, you know, and look at it, because that's what today's generation does. They look everything up on their phones. So I think having both available is really cool, to have the plaques that kind of explain the art or the history or whatever, but also having that QR code is great. And those can always be updated, which is really, really nice. So those are my positives.
Are there any other positives that we haven't covered yet? Yeah, Ted?
I'll go ahead and jump in. I think one of the things that strikes me as a big positive is that it's out there. It's accessible. There's so much of our collection is known to the public. I mean, when I looked at that spreadsheet that lists all the art pieces, there were hardly any that I didn't recognize. And my day job is working in the city of Seattle, and we have a huge art collection, a lot of which is in cellars, you know, in storage. Every time we move people from one floor to another, we go down, we look at that, say, oh, look, let's bring that up and dust it off and put it up on the wall for a few more years. But ours is out there. Mercer Island's art is appreciated because it's visible and it's maintained out there. And I think we do a good job of getting it out there.
That's great. Good to hear.
Yeah, I mean, and along that note, it's kind of weird because we're all saying people aren't really connected to it, but at the same time, I think anybody you talk to on Mercer Island is going to know that like there is art, and that's like, well, can you give us some examples of things? And they're going to reference sort of all sorts of art pieces that are around. And so, I mean, I don't know that people know like the story behind them or what all of the pieces are, but I think that people do know that the art pieces are there, which I think is positive. And I mean, we do have some really cool pieces. I mean, like you said, like the source, the earth, I don't know what to even call it, the configuration at Luther Burbank that you, like Sarah said, she thinks is like one of like the best earth projects in the state. I mean, it's amazing. Like, it's like really cool. I mean, I referenced earlier the birds at the bottom of Gallagher Hill that I personally think are really cool. And I think that like there are pieces that are really cool in the city and are inspiring. And I think there is some amount of variety in terms of like, you know, different people like different things. I think we can improve the variety. But I mean, the collection, like we're working off of a really solid base, I think.
Yeah, I just like the way, you know, that the artwork behind Tully's, you know, that little sculpture park is just, it's just so centralized and well organized. And you know, I've been taking the train, you know, our new train, which does not come here. Someday, hopefully it will. But if you go to each stop, there's nothing there for people to see. You know, Microsoft's like, well, if you're an employee, then you can go to go to your office. But, you know, Spring District is nothing. We have something to show people. And so we really should leverage that art that's right next to the station to encourage people to come here and help our businesses thrive.
And in it, right? Once it opens up, there's the beautiful work that was put inside the station.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe we should be thinking about centralizing even more artwork there to just make it really a destination for people from the region to come and see what the island has to offer.
I'm glad that you've been able to ride the train and see the other stations on the east side because I haven't been over there yet and seen them. But you know, one of the things that we do have going for us when the station opens on the island is that we will have the only kind of sculpture park within, you know, walking distance. I mean, you can walk to the Olympic Sculpture Park in Seattle, but it's right there. And so it's definitely an opportunity to take a space that we already have, an existing space to really make it, you know, even better than it already is. Not only for people who are visiting the island for the first time if they're coming on the train, but all of our community members who hopefully will be using the train once it opens. So I'm glad that you were able to experience that.
It's like the Spring District Station, the new one there, there's only one restaurant within 10 minutes walking distance.
Oh, wow.
So it's just totally sterile.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but we have a community, vibrant community right there. So we should tell the world about it, you know, when that station opens.
Great. JB, are there any other positives that we haven't noted yet?
Another aspect that I think of the pieces that I really appreciated were the ones that were a little more interactive. Like the Dragon Sculpture Park is like very well known. Everybody knows that one and how the kids can interact with it. Also, I don't know the name of it, but the ground one in Luther Burbank, like the
Yeah,
snake-
that's the source. Yep.
Yeah, the source. That one, like, you know, it's fun to go, you know, climb on it
Yeah.
and kind of interact with it. Those I think are really impactful and I think when I think about this, I've got a young daughter and she's gonna grow up kind of going to these places and playing with them and so you know, that's what I'm excited about. And
Mhm.
I think we've got a lot of good pieces to continue to emphasize, and if there's opportunities to kind of build more of that in other locations, that'd be great.
Yeah. We do some sports art. That's what we're hearing here. So that's a good segue. So the other side of kind of what do you see in the collection now is where do you want to see the public art collection go? And again, these are a couple sentences from Suzanne Scone, one of our Arts Council members who couldn't be here today. And I think you already sort of seeing the opportunity. I mean, the train hitting on the train station and the outdoor sculpture gallery, more opportunity for interactive artwork. I think kind of the comments about sustainability are really critical. You know, I think as we see, especially kind of impacts from the climate kind of moving forward, we're really going to have to think pretty thoughtfully and strategically about not only, you know, what facilities we build, but also public art plays a role in that as well. Making spaces, outdoor spaces that are safe for people, as well as easy to maintain is going to be a really like key thing going forward for us. Also the opportunity for connection, building more connection, not only connection with the collection itself, but kind of creating more spaces where people can gather. So thinking about, you know, more of that forward thinking, I know we've already started talking about it, but I'd really love to hear more. And again, if you did write the phrases or the sentences, great. But I do think kind of continuing to just go around and give us your thoughts. I'm going to start in the middle with Daniel now.
Yeah, I mean, I am just gonna like sort of plagiarize from the Aubrey Davis master plan because I was reading it and was really surprised that there were these comments from 2018 that I read and was like, wow, these like, we should just resurface these topics because they make sense. They made sense. They clearly made sense then. They still make sense now. And I picked sort of two of there's 5 points in the master plan, but the two that sort of I connected with were, I'm sorry, I'm trying to find my notes here, is more variety in types of art, especially interactive art. That's like verbatim out of this thing. And I think like we keep saying interactive, like I think interactive is key here in making it something that people will connect with. And then I personally liked the stronger integration with the surrounding context, which I mentioned earlier as well, like really having the pieces really make sense in that area. And I mean, I'm sure to some extent, I'm sure every piece does that. I don't want to like discount these specific pieces and say that anything was random, because I know nothing was random. Everything was thoughtfully placed there. But anything that we can do to make that clearer and like really go above and beyond to have it connected to the specific location would be better.
That's great. How about you, Elizabeth?
So my one kind of big thing that I would love to see happen is more lighting. I think that lighting in itself can be art, as we saw with that temporary show that we had, but I know that I've been at events, when it's not July or August, it gets dark early, and to be able to engage, especially with, I mean, my kids are getting older, but with the younger kids, number one, you can't see the art. But also it's just, I mean, I know that Mercer Island is very anti-lighting for some reason. I don't know why we don't have lights on Mercer Island. I guess so we can see the stars better, but nature's art. But I would say that lighting, the art pieces, I think should be a big priority moving forward.
Great. It's a key piece for safety too, I think, that we can't forget. What about you, Jonathan?
Yeah, I second the lighting request. My daughter here lives in an apartment on North End, and it's scary out there, late at night. There's no lighting at all, and she's walking her dog, and I worry about her. We got a big freeway, I-90, all these people coming through every day. And that'd be a way to, just to have more lighting around the artworks themselves to add to the overall safety for people who walk there. And so going back to the 2018 plan, it says coordinated arts cooperation will benefit the island. So I'd like to just second that again, that we really need to have more opportunities and not just invited events where people, artists who we know about come, but broader community events that the Art Council is involved in, that all artists can come to and really share their wares and their ideas and stuff. I think that's really important. And the sustainability, I definitely agree with that. Sustainability includes social equity as well as environmental protection, and so we need to embrace all those things.
Great.
Sarah, can I add? I think that also just looking at different types of art that maybe we haven't considered. I know that I'm much more aware of public art when I travel now. And I've definitely seen things that I was like, wow, that's really stunning and eye-catching and inspiring. But I've also definitely seen things that I wonder how that got past the Arts Council that that town has. But that being said, I mean, we have so much sculpture, which again is beautiful and it's stunning, but there's so many other opportunities. There's stained glass work, there's architecture, there's a custom dance piece that can be, when a new work comes out, that ties into it or something like that. I just think there's an opportunity to, as we've spoken about, tie the performing arts in with the visual arts and to make that connection within the community. Obviously, I'm coming from the performing arts side of things, but it doesn't mean that I don't have love for the visual art. I just myself can't produce it. That's not my skill set. You don't want to see me draw. But I think there's an opportunity there for other forms and light. I mean, if you look at when they redid the Bay Bridge, right? That half of that is not structural. The big, well, people have their opinions about that bridge, but definitely lighting is a factor in the beauty of it. So I think that those are just to think about different forms: glass art, lighting art, performing art. How do we make it a more broad collection? And again, that's not saying that the sculptures aren't beautiful or that we don't want more of that, but how do we expand it and make sure that it's sustainable? Obviously, as we're seeing with the mosaics, that is beautiful, but we're having issues. So those are considerations.
Great, definitely. I'm gonna add in too, before I forget, the geographic disparity, because I think you all kind of mentioned how a lot of artwork's concentrated up here on the north end, so it would be nice to see a little more artwork potentially spread throughout the island. Yeah, Aubrey Davis has a lot of artwork. Yeah, yeah. How about you, JB? Where do you want to see the public art collection go?
So the first two items that I kind of was thinking about what relate to what Daniel was saying about integrating the context of the art. The first piece of that is being able to use art to tell the history of Mercer Island. And you know, looking way back and different things that shaped how the island became what it is today. As I was kind of going through and doing the research, I definitely went down the rabbit hole and wanted to learn more about, you know, okay, how did the freeway get here? And you know, things like that. I think those little tidbits are things that I found myself talking to my neighbors about and telling them, hey, did you know X, Y, and Z about or about whatever it is? And when you can kind of integrate that into the art, I think that tells a really cool story. And if that can be integrated into the story platform, and it starts to just build a little bit of a word of mouth piece that I think is exciting. The second piece of kind of 4 new art pieces would be to reflect kind of the values and things that we're proud of about the island. So I know we're really proud of our open and preserved spaces, the natural environment, the schools. You know, it's a great place for families. I think, you know, those are big values that a lot of people share on the island, and being able to incorporate that into and be a reflection of the art that's being commissioned. I think the Luther Burbank medallions were a great example of both telling a little bit of the history of the island, but then also in kind of different pieces emphasize, hey, here's our schools, here's you know, just different aspects of it.
Yeah.
And then my third point, I've been thinking about this since our last Arts Council meeting, when we were talking about the maintenance needs of the mural, but I think being very intentional about what gets commissioned and what type of long-term maintenance is required, or what is the useful life of that piece. And so that we're not creating a maintenance kind of budget issue. I think Daniel mentioned it in one meeting. We'd love to see more art being commissioned and more kind of swapping out of pieces rather than our whole budget going to purely maintenance and touch up. So being able to really think ahead on that and position ourselves to you know, be commissioning more pieces instead of just maintaining.
Awesome.
I also think that in general, where we're at in our climate politically or such and so forth is really to honor the indigenous history of where we live. I know that a lot more places are recognizing and honoring the land that we are on. And so I think that that would be a goal I think that this Arts Council should look at, is having more art that reflects that being important. So.
That's great.
If I could add, so the city, the Parks Department specifically has been doing a better job at having events for specific groups such as the Pride in Park event, the Juneteenth event. And it'd be nice if there was some dedicated artworks that would allow those communities to express themselves. Maybe those communities could feel asked and welcomed to create some art for the rest of us so we better understand and their lives and can celebrate their experiences.
That's great. We do have a really diverse community here, so I think there is a lot of opportunity to draw on those stories too. How about you, Ted? What are we missing?
Well, I guess I really like some of the placemaking art that is out there. Like the amphitheater is not only a work of art, it's a place that people gather and where we get to experience other forms of art, concerts and outdoor theater. The source is another placemaking piece of art that people like a place that you go to and explore. The pergola is another example. Primavera, although it's not really something that you can really occupy, but it creates this circle that is kind of, and then there's the path going around it. It creates kind of a center that other things can start to reflect in the area. And I think one of the opportunities that's coming up is there's a new roundabout that is on North Mercer Way, but there are likely going to be more roundabouts on the island in the coming decade. And a roundabout really is an opportunity not just for a piece of sculpture or a piece of art, but also placemaking, something that says, "Welcome to Mercer Island." You know, this is you've arrived, type of thing. I remember when going to our sister city in Tonneau-les-Bains in France. There are a lot of roundabouts, of course, in Europe. But as you approach Tonneau from the primary the primary commuting route, which is coming from Geneva, there's a series of roundabouts that have essentially a story that tell you about the history of that region and of Tonneau specifically. And you don't have time to sit down and read all of that, but at least you get to see some of the visuals of what you're about to experience in Tonneau-les-Bains. So I think having something like that shows roundabouts that help celebrate the place that we're in.
Okay,
And that made me think of something else that I don't know for sure that I'm gonna like push and say we need to do this, but like an idea that we could do is some kind of like theme throughout the city in terms of like, is there something like you go to neighborhoods and like, I don't know, this is like on a smaller scale, you have like Pike Place Market with like the pigs that they have and all the pigs are slightly different, but it's like this theme that you have and
We're not doing pigs.
no, you wouldn't like that. I mean, or I mean, I'll just like throw someone in our community on Mercer Island, like that I've talked to who's like, suggested like we could like, paint all the benches like a specific color and like that's what you're known for. And like, I'm not saying we should do that. I'm not saying we should do anything specific. So I don't want anyone to jump on me for like a specific idea, but like, is there something that we could do that could be thematic throughout the city so that, in every roundabout, there's like some unique feature or I don't know what it would be, but like, like that's something that could sort of unify things. And like, even if you have like other pieces, you could like, potentially there could be some characteristic of it that could sort of tie things together that I think is cool from creating like a collection and yeah.
Cohesiveness.
Cohesive, exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Just an idea of something
Yeah.
that we could potentially look at.
Yeah, I love that. That's great.
Something else I was thinking about, although we don't live in the best environment for this, but a lot of art that when you think about public art, a lot of it is fountains and things like that. Now it is more challenging because we do get a lot of rain here, but even I think Edmonds has a really great kind of open water park. It's a public space and it's got like a play area for kids, but it also has art to it. Just like the new, playground has that, really cute train, which I would argue is artistic. You have opportunities where things can be both art and usable. And I think that you mentioned also with somebody mentioned about where they do the Shakespeare in the Park. Ted, you did. But I believe that also needs some a lot of work, my understanding. Like I wouldn't, as an actor, want to be up on some of those platforms because I don't know that they're stable anymore. So, but then again, that's another opportunity for a piece of art. Your stage, your outdoor performing arts space can also be a visual art
Mhm.
space. I think there's an opportunity to just think outside the box with water, light, glass. Like how can we create art in different ways? So.
Yeah, I think Daniel brought it up with the Aubrey Davis Park Master Plan. That was really one of the big pieces we identified as a community, and then also within the kind of art vision for that park is really focusing more on like functional artwork, artwork that enhances the landscape, trees and plants and all of these different sort of more environmental pieces can be art, in addition to, sculptures and everything. So I'm encouraged to hear you all kind of leaning on that as well, because I do think that there is a lot of opportunity with light and with, taking advantage of our environment. There is actually a lot you can do with art that reacts to the rain and everything. So knowing that we're here in the Northwest, like we should, we could maybe take more advantage of that for sure. So does anyone have any major final lingering thoughts that have not been reflected?
I just want to point out that the other sculpture that I love is the dog outside the Luther Burbank Dog Park. And I just want everybody to notice that all of the bronze has rubbed off his nose because everybody pets him, which means that clearly our community is telling us that we need more interactive art. So I will leave it with that.
Yes, people love Stan. He's a good boy. Okay, well,
If I may just
oh, yeah,
ask
go ahead,
one
Jonathan.
question, I don't know whether this is the time to discuss it. But how would a lighting project like in the sculpture park, how would something like that be implemented? Would that be an arts council thing, or that would be, you know, would it be paid for with arts council money, or would it be a security issue, maintenance? I'm
Mhm.
just curious
Yeah,
how
so
something like that would work.
that one is in particular is kind of a hybrid. So we actually do have a capital project in the CIP right now. It probably, depending on how budget planning goes this year and planning for the 6-year CIP goes, it will likely carry over, but really looking at, in particular, improvements at the outdoor gallery, including lighting, because lighting has been an issue at that space for a while. But there is kind of, you've all sort of talked about sort of two sides of the lighting piece in particular. There's the lighting side of just kind of the practical lighting the art, putting more lighting up for public safety opportunities. And then there is sort of the functional art form piece of lighting. So I see at the outdoor gallery, because it is an art space, an opportunity to do kind of both, knowing that we need lighting to kind of improve safety, improve the experience of engaging with the artwork that's already there, but can't we install lighting in more of kind of an artful or enhancing way? So that would be that type of project specifically would be one worked on in collaboration with the Arts Council. It wouldn't necessarily be funded by the 1% fund, because it wouldn't necessarily be commissioning a new work of art, although it could be, working with an artist or a landscape designer to kind of figure out what that artful detail is. So that's one, kind of a lot of what this process is helping to inform for us on the staff side is those pieces that need to be planned for in the capital plan versus pieces that, might be kind of a separate public art project that is just pursued through the work plan. So long-winded answer to it depends, but in that particular space, it's probably going to be a hybrid. Okay. Well, great. Well, volleyball. Great. Well, so like I said at the beginning, what we're going to do with all of this information, which is just really a first step into the project opportunities list, is I and my fellow staff staff team, we are going to go away and kind of look at this information, pull out the themes, and likely try to come up with a few sort of goal statements or vision statements that can kind of frame the actual public art project planning work, the related capital planning work. We'll look at the capital plan, projects that we already know are likely going to happen, projects that are being planned for right now, and identify, okay, well, we are going to do something in Aubrey Davis. Like maybe this is the opportunity to start pulling out some of these pieces specifically for there. So we'll come back at the June meeting with that, and then we'll get more feedback and keep it moving. So I really appreciate you all taking the time to get out and explore the public art collection. It sounds like everyone enjoyed the experience, so I'm glad that it was fruitful homework instead of not fun homework, and I will do my best to continue giving you fun homework. So for the rest of the time we have, I'm going to go back to sharing full screen, and we're just going to get into a couple other public art related components of the work plan. So as I mentioned before, there's some policy work that we'll do as part of this planning process. And we also have a pretty big DIA session that we hope will make it through the Arts Council this year. But I think this one is a really interesting one, kind of touching on the idea of long-term maintenance, what is still sort of suiting the needs of the community and suiting the needs, of just kind of the island long-term, and then what it means kind of to take care of artwork long-term. And sometimes public art doesn't always last forever. It's not necessarily, it all has a useful life. So with that, I'm going to hop into this one. So we are going to be coming back later this year in July to formally request a DIA session of a work of art in the public art collection. And a DIA session is not anything that we all have done together. We haven't really done a formal DIA session since 2011. The last work we DIA sessioned was Sizzling Water by Nancy Hammer, which was originally installed as part of the first kind of major improvements at Mercerdale Park in the early 2000s. You can see the piece here. Technically, the piece is still here or is still at Mercerdale Park, but it is filled with plants now. It was originally a water feature that just never quite functioned properly. So because of the maintenance side, the cost to continually repair it, we decided to deaccession it, which basically just means the sort of official removal of an artwork from our public art collection. And that's a process that we have a policy for. The last time we revised our policy was in 2003. So that is a policy opportunity through this work. And the policy so we're going to use the policy that we have right now because it is the one that is officially on the books. And it identifies these different criteria for deaccessioning artwork. The one that I'm going to talk to you all about tonight is primarily related to number 4, the artwork endangers public safety. It's not fully a public safety issue by any means, but we're making improvements in the town center related to safety, and so this criteria comes into play. So because you all went out and about and explored the public art collection, you are likely very familiar with the street name inlays that are installed in town center. These were originally installed as part of the Downtown Streetscapes installation, which was a major public art project that the city undertook in the 1990s when we did a major overhaul of the streetscapes in town center. And this project is actually really cool. These are, I think there's about 20 or 25 bronze inlays installed in different corners around the town center, and they all represent the original street names of the town center streets. So when the original settlers or European settlers of Mercer Island came to town, they named all of their streets after their children. And then I believe in the 30s or 40s, we got on the same system as King County, which moved over to a numbered system. So as a way to honor that Mercer Island history, as part of the Downtown Streetscapes project, we installed the original street names in a variety of corners around the town center. We are currently in the process of a big capital project to design new curb ramps to improve the ADA accessibility in the town center. And the bronze inlays unfortunately don't meet current ADA standards. So I've been working with the capital project manager for that ADA accessibility project since last summer to figure out like what can we do with our inlays. So we met with the artist, Ellen Salad, last summer to discuss removing the pieces, and she agreed that removal makes the most sense in order to meet the ADA standards. She also noted that the inlays are really a site-specific project, so kind of getting at that idea of placemaking that you mentioned, Ted. You know, these pieces are meant to be experienced within the actual street corners that they represent from the early 1900s. And so there is a significant element of the project that is lost by removing them and then resiting them. We also talked with the artist about other opportunities for resiting them. She had an idea about potentially just removing some of the inlays, so maybe taking one of each name and then figuring out kind of a new installation, maybe somewhere near, potentially in Mercerdale Park, since it's very close to the town center, or elsewhere. So I proposed that idea to our capital project manager, at least to remove the pieces and then store them for potential reinstallation down the road. And based on the installation costs and the number of pieces that would potentially be salvaged if we tried to salvage all of them or just some of them, it would be about $20,000 to $50,000 to remove. It's not unfeasible, but it's not necessarily ideal. So we as staff are ultimately going to come back and recommend that we do deaccession the pieces. So what that would mean is if you all kind of accepted that recommendation, as part of the capital project, the pieces would be removed and taken off-site. We wouldn't salvage them in any way. They would be removed from our records and they would no longer be part of our public art collection. So I'm previewing this item tonight just to learn, if there's other information you all need in order to thoughtfully make a decision in July about whether or not to recommend deaccessioning this collection or this installation of works. I can certainly collect more information about costs if you are interested in that. There would also be a cost associated with storing the artwork off-site until we identified a plan for reinstalling it if we wanted to do that. So those are certainly things I could do. Also happy to, connect with the artist again and various things. So I just wanted to highlight this request, knowing that, this is kind of the first big deaccession that you all as a group will be doing. And I just want to make sure that I'm here to give you all the information you need to make an informed decision. So with that, I will turn it over for questions.
I mean, I don't know if this is digging into the weeds too much here, but like, so do we need, is the placement of them on their own somehow not ADA compliant, or can we, or when we're doing upgrades to the corners, does that mean that we can't get it compliant? And I guess what I'm wondering is like, do we need to remove them all, or would they be removed when the corners are being updated?
So they would be removed when the corners are all being updated for ADA compliance. So basically, I think right now it's the way it works out. I forget how many corners are being made accessible as part of this project. I'll go back and double check with our transportation engineer, but it ends up being effectively all but maybe a few of these street corners that have inlays in them. So if we were to, remove some of them as part of the project, we likely would just go ahead and remove all of them at some point. They may not all be removed as part of this specific capital project, but once they were deaccessioned as the other corners were improved with ADA accessibility down the road, they would be improved, or they would be removed and taken off-site.
Got it. Okay. And part of the reason I say that is just like, I'm surprised that it costs so much if they're already pulling up the whole corner. Like, how do you spend $50,000 if you're already tearing up the corner in order to remove those pieces?
Right, and that would specifically be to salvage them. So they are
Oh.
installed in sort of a challenging way. And I'll get more specific information if you all are interested in that. But basically, the way the pieces are installed now is they would require, instead of kind of, you know, easy heavy machinery to take them out, it would have to be like individuals kind of going in and saw cutting them out. Which ups the cost because there's additional labor involved with all of it. So, but I can definitely get more information about how they'd be removed and see if there's maybe a better way to do it or a cheaper way to do it.
I mean, I think that it's just, if the decision is like, should we salvage them and what's that going to cost versus don't salvage them and what's the cost? I mean, that I guess is the decision
Okay.
of whether was worth it.
Yeah, I think the other question would be if this is something that we feel really strongly about maintaining, is it something that could be a new art installation once the curbs have been done, as opposed to trying to salvage what we're taking out of the ground? Because it doesn't sound like that's very cost effective.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's definitely a consideration to think about.
One question on the art piece. So you mentioned those were the original street names
Mhm.
and then there's new street names now. So that's just a memorializing what used to be
Yeah,
there.
totally.
Got it.
Yeah. So in addition to the street name inlays, there are a few other bronze inlays as part of that project. There's the milk bottles that are installed outside of Pagliacci. There's a horseshoe and two other kind of art pieces inlaid in the ground that all reflect like different elements of Mercer Island history as part of this overall project. But they are very much independent installations. So removing the street name inlays doesn't necessarily impact the other bronze inlays that are installed throughout the town center, if that makes sense.
And there's nothing else, there's no other art pieces or anything besides those inlays
Just
that
the street
that
names.
notes the old previous street names.
Correct, yeah, yeah.
So you had mentioned at the beginning of the presentation an example of the water feature at Mercerdale and the filling in of that as an example of deaccession. Is the only topic that's being asked of the Arts Council today the question of deaccessing the inlays, or are you actually planning to remove the planter boxes that are there in Mercerdale?
Nope, not removing the planter boxes. That was just an example. That effectively, I would call that deaccession one that was abandoned in place. So we can't do that with the street name inlays in particular. They will have to remove them as part of the design for the new curb ramps.
And my understanding is that the names in the street inlays are the names of the streets. So when you see two names separated by a dot, that's essentially saying this intersection used to be called, this name and that
Yeah,
name.
Helen and Cable, Proctor and Gilman, yeah. So there, that is something to consider as well, if to Elizabeth's point, if it is really important enough to the Arts Council to figure out a way to memorialize that project in a different way, whether or not it is preserving or salvaging the inlays, we can definitely think about that as a long-term opportunity. It is a cool project that unless you might not know, like who were these named by originally, and it was all children who grew up here a long time ago. So if you think of anything else after kind of hearing this or going away and thinking about it in between now and early July, because we'll come back at the regular July meeting to formally request the deaccession, let me know. I'm happy to pull together more information, happy to connect you with our transportation engineer if you want to learn more specifically about the ADA project or anything like that. Just want to make sure you all have enough info. Okay. Last topic, big topic. Okay. So there are a few big policy needs we have related to public art that we're undertaking as part of this project, and we've kind of touched on both of them in some way already tonight. So the first one is the acquisition guidelines for the Art in Public Places program. So this is the specific policy related to commissioning new works of art. Most of them that are mostly funded by the 1% program, although we do use the same policy for projects that are not funded by the 1%. So if someone comes to us and wants to donate a work of art, these policies would be used in the same way to kind of evaluate that donation request. The policy is pretty all-encompassing. It was adopted in 1995 and has not been updated since at least 2009. So we do really need to update the process. I won't speak for Daniel, but having gone through a new public art commissioning process this last year, I would have really appreciated having an updated policy. So this will be something that we begin to undertake. We'll go next time at our workshop number 2, we'll start digging specifically into this policy. A couple of things that I know will probably come up in the process, just kind of knowing how the commissioning landscape has changed for public art, and I think it would be beneficial for the Mercer Island community to kind of come up into the 21st century as well. Some things related to compensation during the selection process. You know, how are we soliciting for artist ideas? How are we soliciting for proposals? When is it appropriate to compensate artists who are preparing for our selection process? That's something we'll talk about. And then community engagement in the art making process. I think we have a great example having just completed Mercer Island medallions. I think that there was a lot of really great community engagement in that project. So we can definitely use that as a foundation to think about how we want the community to participate in that process for all of our permanent artworks. And then the other big one are goals for community and temporary public art projects. So in the pre-work packet, I provided kind of a few different definitions for different components of public art, and 2 that we do here in the community are community public art projects. So those are generally requests from the community to install public or permanent public artwork. So that's something like a request for a donation or a request to do a new mural that hasn't necessarily been instigated by the Arts Council or by the city. It's all coming from the community as a request. And then the other is temporary public art projects. So those are generally short-term projects that are generated by the city, Arts Council members or other community members and organizations. So something like Island Lanterns, which Jonathan mentioned, the Prairie of Possibilities installation that was displayed in Mercerdale Park in October of 2022. And we currently don't have a criteria or formal process for evaluating these requests. Sometimes they kind of have happened a little happenstance in the past. And so it would be really great while we're updating the permanent public art guidelines to think about how we want to approach these community and temporary projects going forward. Often these come with requests for financial support. Often they come with a lot of requests for staff support and other kind of capacity related assistance in order to pull them off. So we want to make sure that as a group, you know, we're all kind of aligned with how we're thinking about those projects going forward. And mentioned here, they could be integrated into the acquisition guidelines since we are already going to be updating them, or they could be a kind of a standalone procedure that we just choose to follow. So those will be 2 big policy pieces that we'll start talking about at the next workshop. There will be pre-work. Hopefully it won't be too strenuous, but if there are things kind of leading up to that you know you want to talk about in connection to these 2 pieces, please let me know. Last slide. Okay, so next steps. Thank you again for all of you being here tonight. I really appreciate it. I appreciate you all taking the time to thoughtfully think about this ahead of time. And I'm excited to continue the conversation at our next workshop, which we need to schedule. So it sounded like everyone or most folks were available on Monday, June 17th at 5:30. So that would keep us on this third Monday schedule. It would be in person or hybrid again. And this is just kind of a high level list of the topics. So again, we'll have a draft list of project opportunities to go through, and then we'll start digging into feedback for the acquisition guidelines and other policies. And if June 17th works for everyone, you can expect to see prep work in your city email by May 31st. So can I get a thumbs up if June 17th is still good for most folks?
What time on the 17th?
Just 5:30 p.m.?
I might be able to get here. I'll be getting home from the airport at 5, so.
Ooh.
Close.
Well, as with all of these workshops and all the work that we're doing as part of this, like, please, if you have time ahead, still do the pre-work, still send it to me ahead of time, and I'll make sure that it's incorporated into the discussion. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing, and thank you all again for your time tonight.
Thank you, Sarah. That was, I think, a really fruitful, well thought out discussion. So thank you for our homework. I think that really helped with that. And we'll move on to other business and absences. And so the only thing that I would ask is if anyone has a planned absence for the next workshop, June 17th, or our next regularly scheduled meeting on July 17th to report. Nope. Okay, fabulous. There being no other business to come before the Arts Council, the time is now 7:01 p.m. and the meeting is adjourned. As a reminder to the councilors, please stay seated until city staff has terminated the Zoom broadcast. Good evening and thank you for joining us.